Okay, I want to talk about another eccentric person, but his name, he's still alive, so I'll just call him Mr. G. He was a Texan expat I worked with while at Boomer Nurseries, and he knows who he is. He was also a sort of a bit of a hippie type back in the 70s and the 80s and all that. And, you know, he was right into surfing, and he was sort of, you know, professional surfer at one point, and he used to travel the world going into surfing competitions and basically make his wage like that. But he had an interesting life. He lives in Australia now. He's a complete resident of Australia and all that, you know, citizenship and the whole shebang. But yeah, he sort of was in a family that was, well, rich on both sides. His mother's got a large restaurant in a city, a common city in Texas, and it's a whole city block, this restaurant. That gives you an idea of the size of the restaurant. I don't know how it's going now or what's happening, but that was his mother's side. Now, his father's side of the family, his grandfather owned a circus, made a lot of money out of it, invested it in oil and ranches. And basically his father and his father's sister, his auntie, blew most of it. I mean, they were worth tens of millions. And in the end, his dad was just, had delusions of grandeur, he used to put it. That's how he used to describe it. And he said his father used to be essentially running around with these high-risk investments, which were essentially scams. And after, you know, investing in some and losing everything himself, he was now running those sort of things himself. And he still had this air that he was a multi-millionaire. You know, and these ideas that he somehow is still wealthy, and he's not. He owes money all over the place. There's, you know, some people that probably want him, things to happen to him, if you know what I mean. Anyways, we'll get on to Mr. G himself. Now, he was a bit of a hippie type, and he ended up entering this commune to learn organic farming. And he was a garlic farmer for a while in Hawaii. But he sort of was there for 1 year and said, yeah, this is good, I learned a lot here and like this. And then he went back for a second year. During that time he was gored by a cow and basically pushed against a fence, like a large steel railing fence sort of thing, not a little crappy one, and stuffed his back, and he was in bed for about a year basically. Well, you know, after more or less 2.5 years or more in there, he sort of got drawn into the commune, and the commune was, technically they call it a cult. It wasn't quite all the hallmarks of the other cults that I've read about and heard about, but it may be known as the love cult. Over here there's a different branch of it called the Orange People, the Free Love Cult, I think it was. Anyway, they had, I don't know if I read of it as a Rajasthani or some strange name. But anyway, it was run by an Indian bloke, and they had a place outside of Portland, Oregon, and it was a farm that was called Muddy Flats. And if you know a lot about culture, you probably know what cult I'm talking about exactly. I'll try and look up into it a bit more and put it in the description anyway. But yeah, he was a bit of a rat bag during his school days, so his mum sent him off to military school a few times to straighten him out, and he said, oh, it was crap, you just, you know, have part of your day where they just march around in circles and get their thrills giving you orders, he said. But somehow this cult, the Free Love cult, found out about this. And next thing he knew, he was sort of weaseled into the security detail. Now, you've got to realise a few things about this place. There were 5,000 people on this commune. they had 2 Learjets and 22 Rolls Royces. This particular bloke was Indian. This is the bloke who ran the cult. The second in charge was also Indian, and there was a scuffle between them, but we'll get to that later. Now, this bloke was extremely well learned, this cult leader was extremely well learned on Greek philosophy and religions of every kind. And I mean, you could name a religion or a philosophy, and this Texan I knew could pretty much, explain the outlines of it. Anyone you know, Socrates, the whole flipping Pythagoras, the whole shebang, all of them. He knew, a bit about all of them. But this bloke every day used to give lectures between 3 to 5 hours on a different philosopher or a different, religion or belief system or whatever. There was also a lot of sex going on, but that's, part of why it was called the free love cult. But he said that, it wasn't as hard in the security forces as it was doing the farming. So he said you used to be standing there next to him or outside of his house all damn day with an Uzi. And he'd be there with his full auto Uzi, and he said it was blimmin' surreal, he said. When he'd be talking on the stage, into the microphone and all that, ranting away, he said, I'd be standing next to him with a Uzi, pointing up in the air. And he said it was surreal. You'd be standing there with this blimmin', little machine gun, and you'd be looking at the crowd, and he said, because I was standing only a couple of feet from the cult leader, he said there were literally 5,000 pairs of eyes looking up at you, and he said it was really surreal with so many people looking straight in your direction. And I sort of think, what a life to have gone in organic gardening, and then next thing, here you are protecting a cult leader. He explains a couple of the, bomb attempts on this leader's life, and there was blokes who had a crack at him with machine guns, and there was trucks that were ramming other trucks to tip on their side, and firing at people in tipped over vehicles, and she had a couple of live moments there. Usually it was pretty easy, but there was one live moment with that one. There was another time where there was 2 blokes. They had a multi-story building in Portland, Oregon, which they sort of, because there's other ones in India, Germany, Australia and stuff like that, there's some of the people from the other branches of this cult would fly in, and that was where they'd house them for the night before they brought them out to the main commune, because it was, not too far from the airport. Anyway, they found 2 different blokes trying to blow this building down, and they were Muslims, and this cult leader used to say that all these different ones, Jesus and this one and that one, were all enlightened, Buddha and the whole lot. But Muslims weren't, they were just completely fake. And that was what he used to say. And as a result, he had a number of disgruntled Muslims have a go at him. It was an intriguing life, to say the least. But basically what happened is the second in charge was feeding some sort of poisonous stuff to, there was a particular cow, and the top man would have the milk from that cow as his milk. Well, the second in charge, could get a way into where this cow was, and was putting stuff in this cow's feed that wasn't poisonous to the cow and wasn't poisonous instantaneously, but was a cumulative poison, a bit like lead or something like that, where it slowly builds up in your system until you're poisoned by it. And she was feeding this to the cow, and of course it was going straight into the milk of this cow. And he said, made the right gestures and whatnot, and put in a request to talk directly to the cult leader in private, and he said, look, she's bloody poisoning your damn cow, and it's probably killing. And he said, you're actually not the first person that's told me. But, that for him was pretty much, the beginning of the end. But they'd had so many hassles from the federal government, who was putting pressure on the state government as well, that basically most people were leaving the commune. And he said there was 5,000, and he said when he left, there was only 50 people left. Anyway, this Indian cult leader decided to leave the country, and they detained him in solitary confinement for about 3 or 4 months for overstaying his visa, or some visa technicality. and later on he died of something which is no doubt syphilis, from what I've read in other books, but he told me the story first, and he blamed it on the US authorities giving him something while he was in solitary confinement to cause his illness. But you look at all the symptoms, and it was just straight out syphilis that he had, and that's commonly agreed upon. But of course, not exactly by Mr. G, as he was, sympathetic to it, and he still knew a few of the people who were in an area of northern New South Wales who had left the States and come over, and some of the other people of the Orange people who were the chapter that was here, and he still kept in touch with a few of them, and he had a bit of a disagreement with his wife and left her, but he's now back with her, I think, because I've seen him around town a few times driving his car, and during that time he nicked off up there because he had friends that could get him in a job and that up there. So, but he always said, well, if you get sick of living at home with your parents, come up to northern New South Wales, lovely tropics, beautiful beaches and all that. And he said, I can sort you out and get you a job and get you on your feet if you want. And but he had a terrible trouble of losing his phones and, going surfing with his phone still in his pocket and stuff like that. And basically, I lost contact with him as a result.